India will provide subsidies to 16 manufacturers of mobile phones and electronic parts, including Foxconn and Samsung Electronics, to expand production in the country. The domestic companies that have been approved for mobile manufacturing under the scheme are Lava, Micromax, Paget Electronics, among others. The government anticipates the output will rise by a total of 10.5 trillion rupees over the next 5 years. The number of jobs directly created by the companies will top 2 lakh over this particular period. One of the 16 companies, Optimus Electronics, plans to invest 300 crore rupees in the country over the next 2 to 3 years. With this, of course, India may soon pip China and Vietnam to become the #1 mobile manufacturing hub in the world. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze how to boost mobile manufacturing in the country. Joining me on the program today are Hariom Rai, Chairman and Managing Director, Lava International; Abhishek Singh, CEO, NEGD, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology; and Deepshika Sikarwar, Senior Editor of The Economic Times. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Hariom Rai, I'd like to begin the program with you first. Let's try and understand and put into perspective, what is the size and what is the potential really as far as mobile manufacturing in the country is concerned.
So currently, last year, we did about 339 million mobiles, valuing about $25 billion. And with the scheme, what we are targeting is about 1 billion odd mobiles to be produced over the next 5 years, valuing about roughly $190 billion. So from 25 billion to 190 billion, that's what is the policy goals. And one of the schemes which has come up to support the policy goal is our PLI incentive. So that's the number we are looking at. And on the export side, we have hardly exported about 2.3 mobile worth 2.3 billion, 16 million mobiles. From 16 million, we are looking at exporting about 600 million mobiles to be exported worth $110 billion. So from our own market is going to grow from 25 billion to about 80 billion. And export is going to grow from current 2.3 billion to 110 billion. That's the target in the policy. To support that, this PLI has come.
Okay, talking about this PLI, Abhishek Singh, let's talk about this PLI plan and, how is it going to help the manufacturers? How is it going to help the country as a whole? What is it going to do really as far as the economy is concerned and the jobs too, if you look at the bigger picture?
See, the whole objective of the PLI scheme is to ensure that we promote manufacturing of mobile phones in India. We are a huge consumer of mobile phones, given our population. And till some time back, we were a net importer of mobile devices. And the overall forex outgo that goes on electronic imports, it becomes much more and is likely to exceed even our oil imports. So given that, for the economy, it's very important that we not only set base for meeting the domestic demand, but also create manufacturing facilities with which we can export mobile devices to other countries also. So towards this objective, the PLI scheme does two things. One, it promotes the top mobile manufacturers from across the world who manufacture the high-end phones like the Apple phones or the Samsung phones to set up shop in India. And the world is also looking at a China plus one strategy. So that would ensure that whatever manufacturing is moving out of China, India would get a part of that. And once we are able to establish that, it will lead to not only job creation, but will add to the local economy also. Along with that, the policy also ensures that we promote local manufacturing companies like Lava, like Micromax, and the other companies which have been chosen, in order to ensure that our domestic capacity also goes up, and ultimately our homegrown companies should be able to meet the competition that comes from the established mobile companies across the world. So it's going to do multiple things. It's going to bring in technology. It's going to ensure investment in the country. It's going to create jobs. It's going to create value. It's going to reduce our forex outgo on imports and ensure that the culture of electronics manufacturing goes up. And once this is done, it will further be followed up for other manufacturing in the field of electronics, because mobile phone is a very small part of overall electronics manufacturing, whether it's the electronics in automobiles or electronics in healthcare or the entire medical electronics field or the computers, laptops, for which India is a huge consumer, as well as we have the potential to export. So we hope that this policy will further be expanded to telecom products, and very soon we will ensure that more and more companies set up shop in India, create jobs, and contribute to the Indian economy.
Absolutely. Deepshika, talking about this culture of manufacturing, this has been, a problem area in the past as well. What steps have been taken so that, we improve on this front and we truly become a manufacturing hub like we would like to see?
Frank, if you've seen over the past decade, the share of manufacturing had really dwindled. And so there has been a concerted effort to actually ensure that the share of manufacturing and its contribution to the country's economy, to its GDP, enhances. So in 2014, from 2014, there was a massive program of Make in India, which was launched. Now, if you look at 2014, and if you look at, when the Make in India really started, post that, there were like 120 mobile manufacturers in the country. Now, the first leg of this whole manufacturing initiative, and there was a lot of focus on electronics manufacture, because we were a huge importer of electronics. Like Mr. Singh also mentioned, we were really depending, and it was largely a single country import, So the first phase was that we not only provided incentives to the companies who wanted to come here or the domestic manufacturers, we also we raised import tariffs to make it more conducive for local manufacturing. Now, the next phase was, you have the PLI scheme. Now, we know India also sort of cut corporate tax rate for any new manufacturer or any new company which wants to come and invest here. With this corporate tax rate cut and with the subsidy support which the PLI scheme would provide, we are as competitive as any other country in Asia, because everybody, when it came to, shifting out of China, we were told, or we keep hearing about how companies have moved to Vietnam. So what the government is now trying to do is ensure that, take advantage of this opportunity which has suddenly risen, that people are looking to diversify supply chains. So what we're trying to do is get the whole supply chain to come in as a whole and set a base here, because that is going to really spur manufacturing. Not just, mobile assembly, but the entire chain, the components and everybody. So that's why we've seen the scheme, the PLI scheme. We've seen Apple's component manufacturers also sort of coming in. So that will really sort of give a huge boost to the entire supply chain and the manufacturing as such.
Okay. All right. So this is a step that the government has taken really to ensure that we boost manufacturing. As far as the companies are concerned, Hariom Rai, what is it that companies are doing to try and ensure that the business that is coming out of China, or as economies and companies try to diversify, how are manufacturers, preparing for this? And can we now take the load?
So I think, let me just, because your program's name is Big Picture, it's important for me to let you know the big picture behind this, whatever is happening. And also address your question of the culture of manufacturing to this current question. I think, first of all, manufacturing was actually gone to only one country, for a very long time, last 20, 30 years. It was actually positioned in China, and then China has created this culture of manufacturing. And the opportunity which has come up is because of two factors: the way the world is aligning against China, and the second is the China is also growing up in terms of per capita income. So these fundamental two factors are pushing the manufacturing out of China. And that, I think, if you look at what India is today in terms of our people who are, I call them PhDs, the poor, hungry and desirous people who are waiting to be deployed. So this is a country with such a great number of people, and especially on the IT side, we have huge, technology with us. So electronics specifically clearly, comes to India. And looking at the kind of market also, once we grow in terms of per capita income, our volume market will also convert into value market. So therefore, fundamentally, it suits, the manufacturing suits to India the most in terms of rest of the world. And therefore, when you come from there and look at the kind of culture of manufacturing, etc., culture is what you require are three things. One is the entire electronic design, not only electronics, but the entire design, which is the hardware design, software design, mechanical design and industrial design. All these four design elements are very critical. Then along with that, as Deepshika has mentioned about the supply chain, and then the entire manufacturing bit. So step by step, what we are doing is what we are actually, as a company or as our companies, Indian companies are utilizing the power of per capita income of India, which is less than 2,000 at the moment. And that, once we give skill to our people, our competitiveness increases actually. It's so simple. But today, because we don't have the entire ecosystem in India, we have a lot of disabilities, and which government has come up and sort of trying to fix those disabilities. And as we are going to move this giant wheel of manufacturing and increase our numbers, the supply chain is going to follow. And that's what we are looking at. And therefore, it's a great opportunity for those outside of India and those inside of India also, because finally, why you require local manufacturing is not only just to manufacture. The foreign companies are going to bring skills, and the skills are going to be acquired by the Indian companies to enhance, further, because the design, etc., the large value addition is going to happen by the Indian companies. So that's the reason these two pillars of global champions as well as the Indian champions are going to boost the manufacturing from India going forward. And it's a great opportunity for both.
Absolutely. All right. It's a great opportunity for Indian companies. It's a great opportunity for foreign companies to collaborate and take the wheel forward is what Hariom Rai is suggesting. But let's talk about this issue of the ecosystem, Abhishek Singh. This to create a conducive ecosystem as a whole, right from design, R&D to actual manufacturing and everything else that goes into ensuring that we have a well-oiled machine. What needs to be done on that front? What is the government doing really, and what are the focus areas?
See, there are several things that is required to be done. One is, of course, the entire scheme, the entire policy of the government to ensure that we promote mobile manufacturing, not only by the big players from outside, but also promote local manufacturing. And as Mr. Hariom Rai said, that once this kind of policy is in place, then what it does is that it leads to knowledge transfers, it leads to IP sharing in some cases, if it's possible, but over a period of time, our workers, because most of the employees of these companies, even if they are Foxconn or anyone, will be Indians. So they will learn their skills and they will acquire it to make products that they can do in other Indian companies later on. So that would happen as a process normally. But what is also required is to how do we ensure that the personnel required, we are talking of 2 lakh jobs that will be created, but how do we ensure that the 2 lakh people who will be employed have the requisite skills to take up these jobs? So this would require ensuring that we run suitable job-oriented courses in our polytechnics, in our ITIs, in our technical institutes, in order to ensure that the kind of people who are required for meeting the job requirements of maybe assembling a mobile phone or designing a mobile phone, if the hardware engineering which is taught in our engineering colleges and all. So if those courses, if people proficient in that are promoted, and added with that, the research that is going on in chip design or microprocessor design, if it is added all together, then we will be able to create systems on our own. If you look at the example of the country which is the biggest manufacturer of mobile phones, for example, China, how did it do? They started manufacturing, say, Apple phones through Foxconn and other companies who had set up shop. But over a period of time, it led to growth of their own mobile phone industry. And the local manufacturing matches the outsourced manufacturing that happens there. So a similar growth trajectory is possible in India. What we need to ensure is that the right policy push is there, the right support for training requisite personnel is there, and the investments which will be required. And when we talk of investments, we should not only be dependent on investments which are coming from outside, but Indian investment, high net worth Indian companies who have a lot of cash balance today, if they invest in manufacturing in India, we can really surely match anyone else in the world. And this has happened in the past. When we were like growing up, I remember the majority of the TV manufacturing was Indian companies. But over a period of time, because of various reasons, we lost out to the Samsungs and the Sonys and the LGs. How do we reclaim that space? So the beginning has been made in the mobile space, but a lot more needs to be done if we have to promote the electronics manufacturing in the true sense.
Absolutely. Deepshika, I'm going to take this point of skilling and the correct skill sets forward with you now. Do you believe that we as a workforce have the requisite skill sets as technology progresses, as technology advances, and we move into this phase of automation and AI?
Mr. Rai would be much more qualified to respond to this question, Frank. But the feedback when we talk to the industry, skilling has emerged as one of the key challenges at current juncture, because technology is moving at a very fast pace, and we have not been able to sort of redesign our courses in our educational institutions to actually ensure that it is the skilled manpower that sort of comes out and they are ready to be employed. So although there is some effort going on from the government side also on the skilling, that people they are trying to bring industry also to include, to ensure that these skilling training institutes, industry participates in them, to ensure that when the people really come out of the educational institutes, they are ready to be employed. Because the current lament of the industry is that these engineers or IT graduates who come out, they cannot be employed by them because they are actually they've dealt with very redundant courses that are no longer really useful anymore. So the effort has definitely been made towards that. But obviously, technology is moving very fast. So what I understand and what I've understood is from people, feedback from the people is that industry really needs to play a very active role here in skilling. Because otherwise, it will be very difficult to really have that employable manpower, which can really take it forward. And if we are looking to achieve the scales that we are looking at currently in manufacturing, it would not be possible if we do not have a very skilled workforce.
Absolutely.
So this is where the industry and the government really need to come together and work towards it.
Absolutely. Hariom Rai, let me pose that question to you as well. As you employ the workforce, as you employ people, do you get a fully rounded finished product, or do you have to do some on-the-job training? Do you have to fine-tune the skills? How difficult or how easy is that process?
So it's a bigger question again. Before I answer your specific question. So Einstein once said, and I just repeat that, we can't solve a problem by the same level of consciousness which we used while creating it. So generally in the past, we have found, a lot of skilling and thought process which government has, and putting in money, giving it to academia and, having those skill set, but it has not worked at all. And if we'll start doing more of that, it is not going to work furthermore, actually. So we have done something wrong in the past, and we must not continue to do that. This is first. Because, why? Unless there is a commercial reason, unless there is a commercial, it is responsibility to deliver commercially. If some people are getting grants and trying to build certain things, it is never commercially viable project, actually. So a lot of money of ours have gone waste, have completely, been wasted by us in the past. And we cannot do that. Let me just share you why I'm saying what I'm saying. If I'm the one, if I have to skill people inside just Lava, as a person, I cannot skill people more than 8 to 10 people who are directly reporting it to me. It's so difficult to take, to actually take it to the down. So the job of the government government cannot think that they can skill the people at the down below. It is impossible actually. The job of the government is to build Fortune 500 companies, skill the top companies. Then the job of the top companies is to skill the next level of companies. And that's the process which one need to follow. And that's what we are doing actually as a company also. And we are trying to work with them to make the government understand actually how can we build our Fortune 500 companies. We just have 7 Fortune 500 companies who create about 13% of Indian GDP. In China, there are 111 Fortune 500 companies who create 50% of Chinese GDP. The process of that is the building skill. The process is that at the high level, you have to build the company skill. And what we are doing, we are, in the manufacturing and agriculture, these are low skilled activities. We are taking guys from the, rural India, skilling them for 15, 20 days, 30 days, and they are ready to be deployed. But to go to the new level of skill, which is design and R&D, etc., it cannot be skilled in the classrooms. It has to be done on the commercially viable, systems, and that is what we are now looking at to, build R&D, etc., along with the government together.
Absolutely. All right. So, Abhishek Singh, moving on from this issue of skilling now, this certainly seems to be like a big issue really as far as manufacturing in the country is concerned. And like rightly pointed out by all the panelists, is being addressed really on a war footing. And we can see that being addressed in the times to come. What other challenges do you see going forward? And how do you propose that we address them?
See, the challenges, I more than challenges, I see a lot of potential, because what I'm seeing is that not only the government of India has come with the PLI scheme, but I see a renewed interest and a renewed enthusiasm in various state governments. When we talk to states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, every state is trying to be more progressive. In fact, there are states which are giving incentives over and above what the PLI scheme is giving. So the entire mood, the entire approach in the country across states, across shades of the government that we have, is in trying to push for manufacturing, in trying to take the opportunity that lies with the electronics manufacturing. And every government in the state, whether it's the central government or the state government, realizes that there's a lot of value to be created if we promote electronics manufacturing. So I will say that the present PLI scheme is just the beginning. There's much more to come. And the entire potential of electronics manufacturing is much bigger than what the PLI scheme has done so far. This is just a small drop in the ocean. The manufacturing of televisions, manufacturing of big screens, manufacturing of medtech, automobile electronics. So there is a whole area that needs to be explored. With 5G coming in, can we create a Huawei in India? Is there a company which can occupy that space? So once we start thinking in that direction, not only we will be able to capture the markets that are there within India, the domestic market, but there is whole potential lying across the world. So we have to have that vision. We have to think of how do we enable that and how do we take our rightful place in that domain. We have the necessary pieces of the jigsaw puzzle there. We need to just put it together, and with the right policy push coming, I am sure our industry veterans like Mr. Rai and other dreamers will be doing much more than what the government has done to ensure that we become the #1 electronics manufacturer in the world.
Absolutely. All right, time to get closing comments now from all my panelists for the best way forward. Starting first with you, Deepshika. What more needs to be done going forward?
When we talk to the industry, they still raise issues about ease of doing business. While much has been done and we've really improved our rankings on the ease of doing business, but much more needs to be done, because at the ground, the reality is, much more different than what it seems. So at the state level, at the district level, at the local block level, there are still issues which need to be addressed. And I'm glad that the government is working towards that. Investment will come, investors will come. Tax regime has become much more conducive. Probably a few more steps towards simplifications and ease within the GST regime probably could really encourage the industry and the foreign investors to come, as also, the procedural things, the faster clearances will definitely be of great help.
Okay, all right. Hariom Rai.
Yeah, no. So I think it is the most opportune moment for India to take a leap forward from here. And what needs to be done is to understand that we are the bottlenecks, and whether it's the government or the industry or the leaders are the bottleneck together. And leaders have to grow to unlock the potential of India for the 18% of population, which is living on just 3.5% of the GDP of the world. Actually, it is the responsibility of the leaders, whether it is us or the politicians or the bureaucrats or the media or judiciary or, leaders need to grow. That's the only thing I would say.
Absolutely. And Abhishek Singh, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Yeah, what I would say, the beginning has been made. Like now, what we need to do is that how do we ensure that the regional balance is ensured? How do we ensure that this manufacturing is more distributed across the country? I worked for a long time in the Northeast. So what one thinks is that can we promote similar schemes in the Northeast, because there are youth all over the country and there are youth who are willing to take these jobs. So how do we upgrade our polytechnics, maybe in partnership with the manufacturing companies, so that they also help in designing the curriculum of the ITIs and polytechnics, and we produce youth who are trained in the jobs that industry requires. It requires a public-private partnership program, future skills program. We are doing this in the field of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, blockchain. Similarly, for manufacturing, we need to ensure that we upgrade our courses from fitters and plumbers and all, which we run in many of institutes, to people who are skilled in electronics manufacturing. And once we are able to do that with the right policy push and the enterprise of our entrepreneurs, we will be able to dominate the electronics manufacturing market of the world.
Okay, all right. On that note, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective. For us, what's coming out of this discussion is that we need to take advantage of the current global scenario where companies and economies are looking to diversify and not just be reliant on one country. India can be a good alternate manufacturing destination. We need to create a better culture of manufacturing. India has an edge as far as marketplace is concerned, and that is something that we need to take advantage of. Going forward, we need to ensure that